You wake up, put on your Ray-Ban Meta glasses. You're living all in. You realize you need coffee. So you say,
"Hey, Meta, how do I make a latte?"
Brew 2 shots of espresso.
After Meta AI gets you caffeinated, you're ready for some beats.
"Hey, Meta, play hip-hop music."
You head to meet some friends, but can't remember the place.
"Hey, Meta, call Eva."
Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the next generation of AI glasses. Just say, "Hey, Meta," to harness the power of Meta AI. Shop now at meta.com/smartglasses.
It can get lonely climbing Mount McKinley, so to entertain myself, I go to ChumbaCasino.com. At Chumba Casino, I can play hundreds of online casino-style games for free, like online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Plus, I get a daily login bonus. It's just too bad that up here, I don't have anyone to share my excitement with. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Live the Chumba life. Anytime, anywhere. Play for free now at ChumbaCasino.com. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Deciding on what to listen to is hard. Using Zumo to stream music from iHeart 90s radio is easy. Or play iHeart Country or Hip Hop Beats. Your choice, all for free. Stream easy with Zumo Play. Get live and on-demand entertainment with no logins, no signups, no accounts, no hassle. This December, get cozy on the couch with Charlie's Angels starring Drew Barrymore, Lucy Liu, Cameron Diaz, and Looper starring Bruce Willis and Emily Blunt. All streaming free on Zumo Play. Go to play.zumo.com now. Life is hard. Zumo is easy.
Tune in to 9 to noon every Tuesday as PA broadcasts live from TCO to talk all things purple. TCO Tuesdays are powered by Sukup Manufacturing.
Quick segment here. Ben Goessling's stopping by the studio. We think next segment, Russo Radio, will stop by about 5 o'clock. Lavelli Neal III at 5:45. Gaardsy in for Barrero today. We're out at 6:10, 6:15 or so. Vikings programming, and then it's the Wild and Dallas Stars coming up tonight right here on the Fan. Max Fuller here as well. We have dueling appearances tonight. Max is at Casper's in Eagan, 7 to 9, right?
Oh, yeah.
I am 7 to 9 at Tom's Watch Bar, downtown Minneapolis. So wherever you are, you can come hang with one of us.
You can do both if you want. This isn't a Sharks and the Jets situation, Bloods and Crips. You don't have to choose. You can do both if you want.
You do have time. Yeah, you do have time.
Yeah, why not?
They're quick enough. They're closely aligned enough where you could.
Yeah, straight shot.
20 minutes or so.
Yeah, why not?
From either one. But Max and I, we text and talk more than people know. But we haven't texted and talked a lot about the Timberwolves season. And we were the two lone survivors, along with who else was on Run It Back Island? Craig Kilborn.
I think it was just us three, pretty much.
Johnny Athletic. And so when we wanted to run it back a year ago, it was the summer of 2023 when we started talking about how we were bullish on the Timberwolves and we were fine with Karl Anthony Towns. And we wanted to see what the team was going to look like. And I'd say we were vindicated.
Yeah.
There was a lot of whoos that were being hootied last year, or hooties that were being hooed.
Yeah.
And so we were excited about this season. But we have not talked a lot.
No.
Off the air or on the air this season. We've not seen much of each other.
Matter of fact, when we see each other in the hallways now, I don't think we've mentioned the Timberwolves even one time.
Well, mostly it's just we just shake our head at each other and just keep moving. We just move it along.
We know exactly what the other one's thinking. We don't even have to vocalize it.
Yeah, it's been tough. Run It Back Island has been taking on shrapnel. We have been under attack.
Yeah. We're flooding.
Yeah, it's not good. It has not been good. And I'm curious how you processed the Christmas Day game, because this is how low my standard is right now for the team. Even if they did give up the 28-point lead, which they almost did.
Yeah.
Kyrie finally missed that three-pointer. Ant finally made something in the fourth quarter. But my bar right now for them is so low in the because I guess I'm just taking the patience profile out of the locker room. All right, you guys are telling me to be patient. You're testing it. You're testing it a lot.
Right.
You're testing it almost daily. And I have to explain to my 10-year-old what a second apron is every time you lose. But I'll trust you, Tim Conley, and I'll trust you, Chris Finch. But because they played so well for the first three quarters against Dallas, I was actually fine if they ended up losing the game, because it was they played really well. They're closer maybe than they were to getting this thing clicking a little bit. The fourth quarters are still a debacle, and a lot of that has to do with Ant's just not playing well. And the hero ball thing is a big problem, and I don't know why it's so difficult to get Julius and Ant to understand in the fourth quarter, let's just keep the thing popping. I mean, the ball was flying around. They were moving it from side to side. You've got Dante driving, passing to Nas. He kicks it back to Dante. Three-pointer. Defense is great. And then the music just stopped. It just shut down. Like the Packer Fan Connections New Year's Eve party. All of a sudden, the record scratched, and somebody dropped a glass, and it was over. But I was actually okay with it because it was just so comical how they have no matchup for Kyrie ever.
Well, they have no matchup for they have a guarding problem for being a team that has a defense, that defense is their calling card. Yeah. They have a problem guarding the best of the best guards in the league. So
I was fine with it. I was, Jesus, take the wheel in the fourth quarter. Whatever you decide.
Right. I know it's your birthday, bro, but you got to take the wheel.
Yeah, I'm sorry that Max doesn't think of you like that Twitterer, that texter said that you should. And Max wants to make your birthday all about him because it's also his birthday. But how did you process the Christmas Day game?
It honestly, I mean, if I had gotten a brand new TV under the tree, I probably would have chucked it out the window.
Really?
I've been.
You were going through it?
I've been the opposite, actually. I've been getting more and more mad at this team because they have been. They went through a couple weeks stretch there. I think they won 3-4 in a row where we saw them play at that level that we saw them play at last year. I started having flashbacks. The shirt was halfway off. It was a little bit of a, like a midriff thing going on. I started feeling the good times again when they were elite last year, but then there's times where they're just so inconsistent. I actually thought that Christmas Day game was kind of their season in a microcosm.
Totally was.
And you're 100% right. The fourth quarters have been a thing. It's been a thing for years now. A couple of years back, it was a thing. And then it seemed like they got over the hump last year. And now we're right back to square one. And every single fourth quarter, you can almost count on them blowing somewhat of a lead. It was beyond me that I didn't think 28. It seems like there's no limit to the lead that they'll be able to blow. And you're 100% right about the ball movement. It's baffling that, and I don't know if they don't see it or if it's just harder to put in practice than it is to say, but it's just, when you look at the stat sheet and it's, this guy's got 10, when there's 4 or 5 guys in double digits, when the ball is constantly moving around, that's usually the times when the Timberwolves are winning, but it's kind of a domino effect because Ant is playing, either Ant or Julius, one of the two is going to be counted on to play hero ball.
Yep.
Then the other one, when they finally get the ball, is going to say, well, then I'm going to play hero ball. And then they both try to take it into their own hands. Jaden McDaniels is somewhere just standing around doing nothing. Rudy Gobert is a non-factor, and Mike Conley is Mike Conley. He's, 38 years old. You can't really count on him to be making these clutch type of plays. So it's almost a domino effect, and the ball ends up getting sticky, and it's super frustrating to see because there is times, and I don't like to, some people like to say effort and stuff like that, but it's hard not to go that route when there is times when you see them play with that same level of defensive intensity that they had in years prior, specifically last year. So it's really frustrating to see. And Finch is, at least, I'll give him some credit. He's at least trying to open up the lineup a little bit. We're seeing a little bit of Josh Minot minutes here and there. And hopefully we can see Dillingham back in the mix in a little bit here. But it's incredibly frustrating to watch this team constantly. I mean, they're like a teenager. They're like going through identity issues every single day. It's like one day they're the skater kid, next day they're coming to school and they got the hair over their eyes and they got the black pants with the chains on them and they're emo shopping at Hot Topic. They're going through an identity crisis almost every single night, and it's incredibly frustrating to watch because that's just inconsistency is the name of the game for the Timberwolves across the board, micro and macro.
They're fragile, too. Yeah. They're very fragile because things go really well. I mean, Ant said it a month ago, front runners.
Yeah.
And then a few things go poorly, and they don't have that connectivity yet to pull it together at times. And it is the inconsistency of so many players. It is funny that everybody's stats are so much better when Conley's out there. But Conley, like you said, it's amazing how many shots he's missed.
Yeah.
That just last year it was just automatic. It felt like every time he shot an open three, it was going in.
He was a top 5 3-point percentage shooter last year. And then I think he's like the highest, going back to video games, I think in NBA 2K, he was one of the highest 3-point ratings in this year's edition of 2K. And
I'll take your word for it.
He can't buy a bucket.
And the McDaniels thing is, I get his value because he's a great defender when he's not in foul trouble, which happens from time to time. He's rebounding better, which they've asked him to do. So it seems like he's doing a lot of the things that they ask him to do. But I've lost complete faith that he's ever going to be a consistent offensive player. And the numbers I read yesterday, Max, it's just literally the story. In the 15 games that they've won, he's shooting 40-something% from three. In the 14 games that they've lost, he's shooting like 22%. Oof. Like if you want to just for everything that we've talked about, Randall's inconsistencies, Anthony trying to figure out how to play without Carl, Conley not playing well, DiVincenzo not being the guy consistently that they thought he was going to be, Naz Reid going, wanting more minutes, not getting them. You can talk about everything. If you really want to distill the Wolves down to one stat, it's that one.
Yeah.
Because I even said this a year ago, when they had their dominant games, like when they would win game 2 in Denver by 100, or they blew out the Suns, it was because all the bit pieces were hitting on all cylinders, right? Naz was, Na was, Jaden was. But teams are willing to say, if Jaden McDaniels is going to hit corner threes tonight, we're not beating the Timberwolves, right?
Right.
He gets that shot. Jim Peterson said it earlier in the season. Seems like Anthony really does a good job looking for Jaden when he's creating. It's one of those guys because Jaden's open.
Yeah.
Like Jaden's open.
Right.
There's an easy pass and it's Jaden's open because on their scouting report, every coach has gone, yeah, we're cool with 3. If 3 hits his threes, we're not winning that night. It's just guys, but he's not going to hit them enough. And you look at those 2 numbers, those 2 breakdowns, basically half the games. When he shoots well, they win. When he doesn't shoot well, they lose, and that's what I can distill it to. And I just don't know if that's ever going to get any better. And he should never dribble more than 3 times.
Yeah,
no, that should be the rule.
I would. Matter of fact, just leave the dribbling to the rest of the team. He doesn't even have to do that at all.
Because then there's times where all of a sudden he does this crazy drive, spin, floater, and you're like, okay, J-Mac, yeah, all right.
It's like, all right, cool.
Once a week, or he hammers it on somebody, but then it's 3 turnovers because you dribbled too many times. So. Yeah, it's maddening. It's frustrating. It's tough out here on the island for Max and me. I think Krager's left. I think he just went to Palm Desert.
I think he just hopped on a boat.
Yeah, he just
started paddling away.
He's got the means to do it. You and I are still stuck here.
Yeah.
So we didn't host a late night show.
I signed a 3-year lease.
Yeah, so they'll see how we do against Houston, who, by the way, is an absolute wagon this year. 2nd seed in the West at the moment.
They're kind of the Timberwolves of 2024 almost.
They are. And Oklahoma City, even without Chet, is continuing to do big things. All right, let's get back to Vikings-Packers. Ben Goessling is in the building. I mentioned that it's a big come down for Max. He was hosting the show like 2 hours ago. Now I'm going to make him go let Ben Goessling in.
Keeping me humble.
Because he is at the elevator. So we'll talk Vikings and Packers with the Star Tribune beat writer when we continue. Don't forget Russo Radio coming in studio around 5 and Lavelle E. Neal III at 5:45.
Yeah. You wake up, put on your Ray-Ban Meta glasses. Classic style, innovative tech. You're living all in. You realize you need coffee. Desperately. So you say,
Hey, Meta, how do I make a latte?
To make a latte, brew 2 shots of espresso.
after Meta AI gets you caffeinated, you start walking to work, and you need a soundtrack.
Hey, Meta, play hip-hop music.
With the built-in camera, you snap a pic of a dope mural on the side of a building that you think is worth sharing.
Hey, Meta, text my last photo to Eva.
Sending message.
After work, you head to meet some friends.
Hey, nice glasses.
Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the next generation of AI glasses. Just say, hey, Meta, to harness the power of Meta AI. Listen to music, make hands-free calls with open-ear audio and built-in microphones, and so much more. All while staying present to the world around you. Shop Ray-Ban Meta glasses at meta.com/smartglasses.
Join Bumper to Bumper's Justin Guard tonight at 7 p.m. at Tom's Watch Bar, Minneapolis. For a KFAN Wolves watch party, we'll have Timberwolves versus Rockets live on the big screens, delicious food and drinks, and your chance to secure exclusive KFAN swag. Get all the details right now at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
All right, welcome back. 651 Carbons Plus Studio. Gaardsy in for Barrero today. Russo Radio coming up at the top of the 5 o'clock hour. Lavelle E. Neal III makes his weekly appearance. And what do we know? Holiday week means Ben Goessling must have nothing else to do because he is stopped by the studio for his weekly appearance on Bumper to Bumper. Standard Heating and Air Conditioning brings us him. How are things?
Things are good. Things are busy, as they are when you're covering a 13-win football team hosting its rival on Sunday. But, things are good.
Yeah, how much... I mean, every season you do a requisite amount of coverage.
Yeah.
But when you're building towards what's happening the next couple of weeks and perhaps beyond, I have to imagine there's some special section terrorism going on right now.
Yes. There's playoff preview plans in the works and was working on that. Was working on a story for next Sunday that will be kind of a season wrap, a bigger thing for that. And then kind of the normal stuff this week. So, there's a lot of trains that I'm trying to run on time in 3 different kind of settings of things right now. So, yeah, there's a little extra stuff.
64686 is the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line. If you have questions for Ben, he's going to be here the next couple of segments. Have you ever covered a Vikings-Packers game with this much on the line?
I was trying to think about this the other day. Andrew Kramer and I had a pretty good conversation about it. 2015, the finale at Lambeau Field, which was for the division title.
Yep.
Probably, I mean...
That's the closest.
That's probably the closest. The other ones that I can think of are 2019. The Packers won the division. That was week 16, I believe, at US Bank Stadium on a Monday night. And then 2012, the Vikings needed to win to get in, and they beat the Packers at the Metrodome in the game that Adrian Peterson went over 2,000 yards, almost broke Eric Dickerson's record.
I refer to that as the Christian Ponder game.
Correct. That was the Christian Ponder game. That was the game that probably bought everybody at least another year. I guess it was another half year of Christian Ponder, but it basically made it that Christian Ponder was still going to be in the plan. The number of times Rick Spielman talked about that game, well, what we saw him do in the Packers game, that shows he can do it. It's like, yeah, but one game is not 16. Anyway, those 3, I've been on the beat since 2012. Those 3 would probably be the biggest. I think you could make the argument that this is as big or bigger than any of them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally. And that I came up with the same list that you did yesterday. And people have written in and said, well, how could you say that this is bigger than when they actually played in the playoffs, which they obviously did the year after the Ponder game. They did the Moss Moon game, when Tice's team went over there. And I would say, I get it. It's different because it's the playoffs. It's literally win or lose. You're done. But I had no illusions. I mean, maybe the Moss team I thought could go to the Super Bowl. I had no illusions that the Joe Webb-led team or Christian Ponder-led team was going to go to the Super Bowl. Like, this game feels bigger because, at least on the Vikings side of it, it could potentially set them up to have home field advantage throughout, which in our lifetimes only happened, I think,
1998.
Once, right? And we know how that ended. So, and we know how important that is. So I do think it's more important than those playoff games. Does that make me crazy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the one that's different here, this is like the first time that the two of them have ever played when they each have 11 wins or something like that. It's the first time that they've both played in a season where they ended up with 11 wins by the end of the year since 1998. The Packers were a wild card team. That was the famous Terrell Owens catch in the end zone at Candlestick Park. Vikings obviously 15-1 that year, but the level of playoff prospects, I think, for both of these teams makes it different because I don't know that anybody would have looked at even the 2015 when they win the division title. I don't know that anybody looked at those teams as the preeminent contender in the NFC. That was the Panthers that year when they went 15-1. Right. Cam Newton MVP. This feels different because I do think both of these teams, and the Packers would have a tougher road having to go on as a wild card, but I think both of these teams are in the mix to contend in the NFC. It's possible they'll see each other in the playoffs again, and then there probably won't be much debate about the biggest Vikings-Packers game in our lifetimes. But I think this one, because of what it could mean, what the stakes are, especially for the Vikings, I think it's fair to put this pretty near or at the top of the list.
You're always, when you talk with Dan, you always go, the matchup that I'm interested in, or when you're on the pregame show with Muss, you've always got a matchup or two. So I'll ask you to spill those. We'll let you handle it with Muss on Sunday from US Bank. But I know where I think this game is going to be decided. Where do you think this game's going to be decided? Or what are you watching for?
Well, I mean, the Jair Alexander thing, I mean, if he's not going to go again, and it looks like he's not, I mean...
There's something going on there.
Yeah.
It's too weird.
I think there's enough tension between him and the Packers with some of the stuff that went on last year that I wonder how motivated is he to get back out there. I don't know that for sure, but knowing kind of some of the stuff that went on last year, I do wonder if that's a lot of it. But
did you see what LaFleur said today?
I haven't seen exactly what he said.
Somebody asked him something. I'll butcher. The punchline is the most important part, but the question was something along the lines of, are you saying he's not ready to go, or is he saying he's not ready to go?
Okay.
And LaFleur's response was very PJ Fleck-like, the injury report will be out at 3.
Okay.
So that says a lot, right?
Yeah,
but there's a lot going on there. Sinekin on this chair yesterday said he doesn't think he'll ever play for the Packers again. He just thinks it's over.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah. So I'm not counting on him going.
No.
But he also hasn't played against the Vikings a lot here recently, or anybody.
Yeah, he's missed a lot because of injuries, and I do wonder how much of this is when you have an injury and you're like, I don't really want to go put it on the line for this team if I'm not going to be here. How much that's going into that decision, I wonder about that. But whether he's there or not, and I expect he will not be, those corners have had a lot of trouble with Justin Jefferson. Eric Stokes has had a lot of trouble with Justin Jefferson. So do they have an answer there? Xavier McKinney is tied with Kirby Joseph, I think, for the league lead in interceptions at 7. He picked off Sam Darnold in the first game. So, yeah, I would say the matchup I'm interested in, if I got the wording right there. How do they cover Jefferson? Because we have seen teams do the split safety thing most of the time, and the Vikings look like they're finding answers for that. So do the Packers take a different approach with him? Is it McKinney shaded to his side a lot? How do they handle him? I think it's going to be interesting to watch. And then there's always, I think Garrett Bradbury and Kenny Clark have seen each other enough over the years, and Garrett Bradbury has struggled a lot with Kenny Clark. So how does that Packers defensive front match up with this interior offensive line for the Vikings especially? I think that's going to be a big factor here too.
Yeah, you went that side. I go the inverse or the reverse. You're the wordsmith of the two of us. I'm curious what Flores has for Jordan Love and vice versa. I just, how explosive they are, and Watson's the other one we don't know about, right? I would assume he probably plays.
It looks like he's trending that way.
Yeah, so that would and give it a shot, right? There's no reason not to.
Yeah.
And J Love has not gotten sacked here recently.
No.
Right? Like 3 times in the last month or so.
Hasn't even been pressured very much.
And so that's the other thing, because somebody said, well, sacks aren't important, pressure's important. Totally agree. But does Flores have it?
Yeah.
This game, I think, tells almost all of it, because the Packers offense is on a heater. I like you, don't think they're going to have answers for the Vikings offense enough.
Yep.
JJ and JA and TJ and the whole bit. So what does Flores have? Like, what's the right approach against the Jordan Love, who's just on an absolute heater right now?
Yeah, I mean, they blitzed him a lot in that first game, but I think the Packers were missing an offensive lineman, and Love was coming back from that knee injury. So It might have been a little different. But his numbers when he's not pressured versus when he is pressured are drastically different. I think there's like NFL Next Gen Stats had something about this. There's only one quarterback in the league that has been more different in terms of their production when they're pressured versus when they're not. I mean, Jordan Love, when he's not pressured, has been great. He has not played well under pressure this year. So I have to imagine they're going to try to get after him however they can. The other thing that makes it trickier is the Packers, I think, have a larger complement of weapons than they did in that first game. Luke Musgrave back, Tucker Kraft.
Gerby just rattled off like 10 of them.
Yeah, they've got a lot. And Josh Jacobs, I think. Josh Jacobs didn't have a big day at Lambeau that first time, because when you're down 28-0, you're not going to run the ball as much. But they have been running a lot of that offense through him, and I think that becomes a challenge as well. I mean, Brian Flores talked about it this week. He said, our tackling's been good, but when Josh Jacobs is coming to town, we need to talk about tackling.
That was a great quote.
Yeah, it was.
He said, I think we've been good. Now, they weren't very good in Seattle. I thought they gave up.
That's why I asked the question. I didn't think they were very good in Seattle.
Yeah, but I thought that was a great quote. He's like, I think we've been good, but I watched some film. Like, we're going to bring up tackling. Yeah. Because you got to, because 3 yards turning into 6 enough times, that matters, right, in a game like this?
It sure does. And that changes what you do on second and third down, because if it's 2nd and 4, you're probably not bringing quite as much pressure. And the Vikings like to blitz on 1st and 2nd down, and then almost drop into coverage more often on 3rd downs than you would expect. So if you are able to bring heat because it's 2nd and 8 instead of 2nd and 4, I do think that makes a difference.
A lot of good texts coming into the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line 64686 for Ben Goessling. We'll get to some of those and a couple more questions I have about the border battle, which has some big ramifications this Sunday at U.S. Bank Stadium. More with Ben Goessling from the Star Tribune when we come back on The Fan.
Time now for the Vikings Report on The Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings safety Cam Bynum joins Barrero next after this from Miller Lite.
You wake up, put on your Ray-Ban Meta glasses. Classic style, innovative tech. You're living all in. You realize you need coffee, desperately. So you say,
Hey, Meta, how do I make a latte?
To make a latte, brew 2 shots of espresso.
After Meta AI gets you caffeinated, you start walking to work, and you need a soundtrack.
Hey, Meta, play hip-hop music.
With the built-in camera, you snap a pic of a dope mural on the side of a building that you think is worth sharing.
Hey, Meta, text my last photo to Eva.
Sending message.
After work, you head to meet some friends.
Hey, nice glasses.
Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the next generation of AI glasses. Just say, hey, Meta, to harness the power of Meta AI. Listen to music, make hands-free calls with open-ear audio and built-in microphones, and so much more, all while staying present to the world around you. Shop Ray-Ban Meta glasses at meta.com/smartglasses.
It's a Purple Friday right here on The Fan, and we want to send you, yes, you, to Sunday's game. Head over to our contest page, click on our Vikings vs. Packers contest, and enter the keyword SKOL for your chance to win a pair of tickets. That's keyword SKOL. SKOL. Head over to KFAN.com, a keyword contest to enter now.
Way to act that one out.
Yeah, you like the hand motions.
I mean, you had to do the hand motions just to get in there?
I'm doing the stuff that the listeners can't see, the little things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm a details guy.
You're Mr. Details. That's Max Fuller. I'm Justin Gaard. We are in for a bumper to bumper Dan Barrero today. Friday regular Ben Goessling in studio. Standard Heating and Air Conditioning brings us Ben. He's back for a second segment. Russo Radio's in the building as well. He's going to join us at 5. Give us a Kirill Kaprizov update. You were waxing nostalgia about your hockey covering days yet again.
Yes. My days as the Wild's walking jinx in 2011. It's actually about this time of year that a couple weeks earlier in the year that I walked in and things went from the best record in the league, surprisingly, to they couldn't win a game with me in the building.
So you've covered hockey, you've covered football, obviously, you covered baseball in D.C.
Yep.
Have you ever covered hoops? Is there any hoops in your background?
I have not covered hoops on a regular basis. I've certainly covered basketball games in my life. Actually covered, I think, I ended up stringing a lot of the Western Conference Finals, the Wolves-Lakers series, for the Washington Post.
There you go.
Good for me.
Yeah.
But I, until a couple of years ago, I had been in the building for the most recent Wolves playoff win. So I'm not always a jinx.
I don't believe in that stuff.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't either.
Don't let people bring you down when that stuff happens.
It's kind of fun. It becomes a good bit to let. Ryan Stanzel still gives me a hard time about that Wild season.
Well, Stanzel's in the building for everything. He's at Gopher games all the time. He's at Timberwolves hockey.
Seen him at Vikings a few times.
Yeah, Stanzel's omnipresent. Yep. So if anybody's jinxing anything, it would be a guy like him.
That's very possible.
Why is Ivan Pace Jr. all of a sudden so critical to everything, to all the Vikings' hopes and dreams defensively? Because the numbers don't lie. When he's in there, you guys write enough about it. First of all, do we expect him to play? I know he's officially listed as questionable. Yeah. And what is his value, not just as a player, but what he means for the rest of the defense and where they get to go?
Yeah, I think he is going to play. I mean, they have to make that decision by tomorrow at 3:00, but he was full participant in practice all week. So I think the odds of him playing are pretty good. As for why he's so important, I think it's a couple of things. Some of it's, I think, the run defense. I mean, Blake Cashman's been good there, but Cashman's more of the drop into coverage guy. I think it's probably a little more of a specialty. And Pace is not one to exercise a ton of restraint in terms of he's not one to shy away from contact is probably a better way to put that. But so against a guy like Josh Jacobs, he's not a big linebacker, but I think his coach, his college coach, described him to Mark Craig a couple of years ago when he was a rookie and said something like, he's going to hit you over the head with a crowbar for 60 minutes. It was like, this is a great quote, but
yeah, so he's Perry and Marv from Home Alone?
Yeah,
basically.
Pretty much. He's willing to get in there and do a lot of the dirty work that, I mean, everybody has to do that, but he almost seems to relish that. So it's partially that, and I think it's also a lot of their looks become a little more versatile when he's in there, because what's happened with him out is Josh Metellus basically ends up playing a linebacker. Mm-hmm. So if he is back, you can keep Cashman and Pace at linebacker and move Metellus around and put him in different spots, put him off the edge, and have a little more versatility with some of the pressure packages that way.
Are the Vikings corners up for it on Sunday?
That is a good question.
Thank you. I was due.
I think Stephon Gilmore is healthier. I think you have seen moments. I mean, DK Metcalf and he were going back and forth quite a bit on Sunday. The Packers don't have a receiver like that, but I would imagine they're going to get tested. I would think Gilmore's going to get tested. How much is he willing to or able to go run around and cover ground if they put him in man coverage? I mean, they've done a little more man coverage later this season than they had. Murphy, I think, has played awfully well. But beyond that, with Fabian Moreau out again, there's not a ton of depth there. They will certainly have Shaq Griffin, I think, playing a bigger role as well. But it's a lot with this Packers team, man. They have a lot of ways to hurt you, and the other piece of it is those tight ends, I think, have become a pretty dynamic part of that passing game. So there's a lot of things that they can throw at you to test you.
Well, in the feast today, PA and Sinekin were going back and forth. There's like 3 tight ends that they have or might play, and they were each arguing over which one might have a better game.
Yeah.
So they definitely have some options there, too. I mean, the Vikings have obviously mixed in their tight ends even more than Hawkinson this season because he was out for so long, but that was a sneaky thing that I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, I think the third one is Ben Sims, who was in Vikings camp, I believe, last year, and the Packers picked him up. And he had some moments in the preseason where, like, hey, this guy can play a little bit. I think he had a leaping touchdown catch in a preseason game, if I recall.
Yes.
And then he goes there, and he's played a role. And the other thing they do, too, is their receivers get involved in the run game quite a bit, whether it's Jaden Reed or I think Bo Melton has done some of those things. A lot of the jet sweep stuff that they've done has been pretty effective. So it's a lot to account for. I methat is really the thing with them is they have a number of different ways to get after you that I think makes them probably a little more dangerous than what we saw at Lambeau Field. They're playing well. So a lot of those things make it a little bit more of a challenge, I think, in some ways than even that Lambeau game was.
Harrison Phillips last night on the Vikings podcast here in the Fan. I played the cut earlier. I'm not going to play it now. It's a little over a minute, but he talked about, which I thought was a pretty honest answer, and I'm sure Harrison's a great quote. I'm sure you guys go to him a lot. Pretty thoughtful guy. And he said something that you don't hear players often say. That's reality, and I appreciated the honesty that it's easy in a sense when you're beating Houston and the Niners and nobody believes in you and no one's talking about you. You're not getting the Greg Olsen crew. You're certainly not getting the Tom Brady crew.
Yep.
You're getting, no disrespect to any of them, but you're getting, B, C, C, D, E, and F Fox crews, right? So it's easy to rattle off a bunch of wins and feel good about yourself, and when no one expects anything of you, you're just freewheeling and everything's great.
Yeah.
He said, it's a little different. It's different when there's all of a sudden a lot at stake and Tom Brady's in the house. And if you beat this Packer team, you're probably Sunday Night Football and everything's on the line. Have you sensed that from the team that it's a different vibe than 2 months ago and that they know that it's what's at stake, but that's a different pressure to play with?
It is. And I think they certainly are aware of what's at stake. I've seen some of that. I don't know that they're tighter because of it. I haven't seen
that was the phrase he said. He goes, things are tighter.
Yeah.
He goes, things are tighter, and my job is to get everybody to remember the freewheelingness of it.
Yeah.
But anyway.
There is a lot of that line to walk. It's interesting that he said that. I don't know that I've necessarily seen a team that I would say is tight, but probably a little less freewheeling, a little less kind of loosey-goosey than they were. And I think that's to be expected just because, you do know the entire country is going to see this game. This got flexed into the 325 spot. It's possible that the entire country it's possible that every game you play for the rest of the year will be broadcast to the entire country.
Right.
So when you have that, it is a little hard to block all of it out. And they've tried. Kevin O'Connell has talked about that a lot, but it's human nature to understand what's going on. There was a moment a couple weeks ago in practice that there was a player on special teams that I think ended up falling down, and guys are kind of roasting him for it, saying, hey, what are you even doing on special teams at this point in your career? And he just goes, hey, man, I'm just trying to get to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, and I thought that was worth noting because it's like players are almost kind of taught not to speak that word until it becomes or those two words until they become a possibility. But O'Connell talked in his post game a week or two ago about this. There's a lot of championships level stuff happening here. And there's all of that stuff that's cranking up. Brian Flores, I think, is aware of it. He talked about once players get to the playoffs, I have a curriculum for them based on all of my playoff experience of how to handle all of the emotions. So a lot of what they're doing right now is, for all intents and purposes, playoff football. So handling all of that does become part of the equation, I think.
The line that always comes up, and KOC's used it, of, we didn't care what they were saying when they weren't saying anything. Yep. Why would we care now that everybody loves us? Because you're human.
Yes.
That's why. That sounds good, and I know they have to think that way, but the other thing that Harrison said that's a great point, Max and I talked about it about an hour ago, you can think, especially for the young guys, because if people have been with the Vikings since KOC, these young guys, they probably think, we win 13 games every other year. This is extremely rare what's happening. Mm-hmm. And look no further than the Timberwolves to know that you don't just get to keep the same puzzle that you had a year ago The puzzle's going to be different. How different, we don't even know. Well, we're not going to talk about Darnold's future today. I'll give you a break from that.
But there are a lot of free agents.
For sure.
It does affect it in that sense, I think.
The defensive coordinator might not be here next year. So there is that urgency of, we don't know. And I even said it going back to the Wolves in the spring, like, yeah, you think you have a big window, but windows close quickly.
They really do.
I mean, the Vikings thought they had a window, right? With Cousins, they thought they had a window with the Keenum stuff.
Yeah.
We thought we had a window going back to 98.
Yeah.
Like, windows open and shut very quickly. And so that is why you have to have the urgency of now, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And I think windows are easier in sports where you play 162 or you play 82. And if you lose one or two, it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. I think it is different in the NFL, where you could have one play on Sunday or one play next week that will determine whether or not you will ever set foot in the U.S. Bank Stadium locker room again. I mean, you think about that in terms of Sam Darnold, in terms of Aaron Jones, whoever, whether or not those guys ever enter the home locker room at U.S. Bank Stadium after Sunday could be determined by one thing that happens either of the next 2 weeks. So it is difficult not to have some of that enter your mind when you're going through it. And Flores said a lot of what he talks to guys about is just how to handle that. He basically said there's no way to block all of it out completely. Like, the emotions are going to be higher. The intensity is going to be higher. How do you handle all of that? How do you just sort of reckon with it, I think, is a lot of what he wants to talk to them about, because it is a real thing.
What have you observed from Sam Darnold, if anything, changing from when you first got here as bridge quarterback guy to an afterthought, obviously, to the conversations that are now being had about him at a national level? Are they going to franchise him? Is he going to get $50 million a year? I asked Seifert about this yesterday, I guess, because he joined me. He said he hasn't seen a whole lot of change. He's still pretty even keel, but it's pretty heady stuff for a guy who has been through the NFL ringer.
It is, and I haven't seen a ton of change. I mean, he has sort of doubled down on this one game at a time thing, and I think probably because they are talking to him about that, aware of the fact that there is real money at stake for him here. I mean, this has become something where a lot of what they promised him, a lot of what they said could happen, has happened. He has played well enough that he's rehabilitated his reputation. He's put himself in a position to make a lot of money, which then means that there's probably more to lose. So there is that conversation, I think, happening between him and Kevin O'Connell, him and Josh McCown. I think a lot of those discussions are sort of acknowledging that this is all part of it. And I think for the most part, he's managed it well. I think he's been a little more, a little looser, a little more willing to show a tiny bit of his personality, which is more than we got early on. But yeah, I do think there is an intentional effort, intentional to use a Kevin O'Connell term there, to understand that this is a real thing, that there is money, there is reputation to be gained from what happens over the next few weeks here. How do you manage that in a way that doesn't give into that and actually sort of is able to make the most of it?
Well, by the way, like, he might throw a pick on Sunday.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that he's letting the moment get, because I think people are waiting for for the pumpkin, right? They're waiting for the clock to strike midnight. He's put together a pretty nice sample size, as we like to say. And certainly since, that stretch where he struggled with the picks, he's been unbelievable. And that's mythic stuff, what he did against Seattle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can really make it, and I did on Monday, as mythic as you want, where the headset goes out, his sock is torn, his ankle's shredded, his finger hurts.
Pets' heads are falling off.
Now your back's going to hurt. You just pulled landscaping duty, Happy Gilmore. And then he throws an absolute dime to Justin Jefferson, which wasn't even necessarily where JJ was supposed to be, but he saw it. They both saw it, and he threw it. That's pretty heady mythic stuff there from a guy who couldn't get a sniff the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's the kind of stuff that you start to say, do we want to let this walk out the door?
Oh, you're going there. See, I didn't go there.
Well, yeah, I do think I'm going there a little bit, because I think the challenge is to not think about every step of it that way, because there is going to be that discussion. It is going to be something they have to think very seriously about. But how do you stay in the moment and not attribute that level of circumstance or consequence to everything you do? I think is a lot of, because he's never played in a playoff game.
Well, and that's why I think I've always thought it's ludicrous to go, well, we got to see how he does in the playoffs. Why? I mean, if he So what's the number then? Is it one interception, 2 interceptions, missing JJ? Like we're really gonna shrink all of it down to maybe one playoff game.
Yeah.
Like I just think that's stupid. I think that's mismanagement. As opposed to trusting, however many weeks he's been with the team and the performances that he's put on in pressure situations. Now, if he's terrible Sunday, and he's terrible next weekend, and he's terrible in the playoffs, maybe it's easier. Yeah. Maybe you go, all right, the clock struck midnight, we ran out of time, all of that, but. What if he plays really well the next 2 weeks and then all of a sudden doesn't play well for a game? We're going to go, yeah, okay, well, that makes it, that just makes no sense to me.
Well, it could come down to, like we say, it could come down to the one play. His predecessor would probably tell you that one play in a playoff game can shape narratives.
Yeah, but he also had those narratives before that. That he was Mr. Safe, that he was checked down, that he couldn't play prime time. He had to do and he had to get out of that. That was like a huge...
Like part of that season.
Sam's microwaved a little bit because we're just finally seeing him play this well. I don't know if there is a narrative about him except he's just been bad.
Yeah.
And now he's good for a stretch.
I think that's been the narrative, that he's been bad and that he probably gets deer in the headlights a little bit in clutch situations. I think he has answered a lot of those questions. I mean, like you say, what he did Sunday, the presence of mind, even in that moment when the headset goes out, to get a play called and then basically say, I'm not going to try to extend this if I don't have it. I'm just going to run to the sideline, get a first down, and then even I'm right here. Yeah. I'm going to go get the next play call from Kevin O'Connell, whose headset is not working, and I'm going to make sure that I get it from him, and we're not working on the technology. That's a level of composure in that building where the Vikings had not won since Chester Taylor in a 95-yard touchdown in 2006. That's a pretty good dress rehearsal for the playoffs, I think.
Right. Well, and Lieber said it. I thought it. Like, we were watching the game at home, and my wife asked me after Seattle scored, well, do they have any chance? I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. Like, I felt like, they've done it all year. Like, would I bet on it necessarily? Well, no. But it's not like he can't do it. They can't do it. And, 6 plays later, they get the face mask, which obviously jump-started them. Yep. And the rest is history. Like, he's done that a lot here, especially in the last 6 weeks.
And I do think there is internally a little bit of a difference in the way he approaches this stuff. And in conversations we've had with people, you see a little bit of this where Cousins, and there was a moment in the Netflix series, again, the Colts game, where Cousins had thrown a pick, I think, because Jalen Reagor ran the wrong route, and O'Connell's over to him on the sideline now. Don't get frustrated. There was this moment of, I need you to stay here. I need you to stay with me. Let's not compound this and sort of catastrophize things. And Cousins goes, I'm getting frustrated. And Darnold, from what you hear, he's kind of been through enough of this. He's been kicked in the teeth enough in his career that he's not sitting there worrying about the next bad thing that's going to happen because of the thing that already happened that doesn't have any effect on the next thing. Right. So he's been better, I think, about moving on from those things. That is a thing in his mental process that, in talking to people, they have seen and been pretty happy with, I think.
We look forward to all your various projects the next few weeks. When you bring all those trains home, we look for. Hopefully, it goes better. I guess there was a train in D.C. today that didn't let anybody get on and just left hundreds of passengers. Well, there's a miscommunication. Hopefully, the train runs smoother than I trust that it will, because it always does.
We'll get it all done. The one tomorrow, I spent over a little time at US Bank Stadium writing about the Vikings pregame production and kind of all of the work it's recognized as one of the best in the league. So kind of a fun behind the scenes. Got to see the big control room with all the expensive equipment. And so that's one of the projects. And then there are more to come.
Love it. Have fun on Sunday, man.
Thanks,
it's always fun to cover stuff that matters.
It should be a blast.
Appreciate
should be a lot of fun.
In.
Yeah, thanks.
Ben Goessling, Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, brings you his weekly appearances on Bumper to Bumper. He stopped by studio this week. He'll be on the pregame show as well on Sunday, which starts at 1 o'clock. Russo Radio in the building. He'll join for the next 45 minutes or so as well. What's going on with Kirill Kaprizov? We'll get to the bottom of that with Russo when we come back.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
You wake up, put on your Ray-Ban Meta glasses. You're living all in. You realize you need coffee, so you say,
Hey, Meta, how do I make a latte?
Brew 2 shots of espresso.
After Meta AI gets you caffeinated, you're ready for some beats.
Hey, Meta, play hip-hop music.
You head to meet some friends, but can't remember the place.
Hey, Meta, call Eva.
Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the next generation of AI glasses. Just say, hey, Meta, to harness the power of Meta AI. Shop now at meta.com/smart glasses.
Deciding on what to listen to is hard. Using Zumo to stream music from iHeart 90s radio is easy. Or play iHeart Country or Hip Hop Beats. Your choice, all for free. Stream easy with Zumo Play. Get live and on-demand entertainment with no logins, no signups, no accounts, no hassle. This December, get cozy on the couch with Charlie's Angels starring Drew Barrymore, Lucy Liu, Cameron Diaz, and Looper starring Bruce Willis and Emily Blunt. All streaming free on Zumo Play. Go to play.zumo.com now. Life is hard. Zumo is easy.